All right, let's continue working on our calculations for our FRC 2023 Scouting App tutorial. In the last episode, we went over how we do our auto scoring, and now we're going to go over Teleop and endgame score to eventually get our total score for each match that a robot participates in. So to get started, like I said in the last video, let's refer to the scoring in the FRC 2023 game manual, which for Teleop includes the number of game pieces scored in the bottom row, middle row, and top row. So let's start by getting those scores. So let's go down here to add calculations. Let's add all three of those. So we'll have Teleop high score, Teleop mid score, and Teleop low score. All right, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and start by tackling Teleop high score, and then we'll just repeat what we do for mid and low score as well. All right, so if you guys remember from our scouting app that we created in the earlier parts of this tutorial, in the Teleop tab, if I go to bring that up right now, you'll note that we had buttons for pickup cone and pickup cube. And if we go ahead and open those, we'll see that all we had our users do was click on the position that they scored an item in. So these are button clicks. These aren't necessarily going to be like the numbers that we did for auto, so we have to treat them a little bit differently. See, whenever someone clicks a button, RLD tracks the exact time that they clicked that button and then stores it in your database. So the first thing that we have to do in our calculations is get the number of clicks out of that button. So let me show you what I mean. So let's start with, instead of just doing Teleop score, let's say Teleop high items. So this should just be the number of items, and then when we do the score, we'll multiply it by 5. So to start getting the number of items, we want to go here to events and grab this count here. So it counts the number of things in the argument. So let's put that on here, and let's grab our first cone left high from here. So what that's going to do is cone left high is keeping track of all the times that someone clicked that cone was scored in the left high. This will tell us how many times they clicked that button, okay? So now we know how many times someone clicked the cone left high button. But that's not all we want. We also want to know the cube left high and the cone mid high and so on and so forth. So let me go ahead and add those in. All right, so now it's going to count every single one of the buttons in here. So it's going to count the number of times cone left high was clicked, the number of times cone mid high was clicked, cone right high, cube left high, cube mid, and cube right. So now we have the number of items that were put in the high row, the top row of items on the field. All right, now we can do this with all the other ones as well, starting with Teleop mid items. And we'll do the exact same thing we did with the last one, starting by putting count in here and then putting in all of the buttons that someone would click for when you're putting an item in the mid section. All right, so now we have our Teleop high items, our Teleop mid items. Before I go and do the Teleop low items as well, let's go ahead and put in some more fake data so that way we can see on our tables that all of this is working. So if you remember, the best way to put in fake data is to go to our input form. We'll click on preview up at the top, and we'll fill this form out as if we're one of the scouters on a team. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run through that quick. All right, so I put in a little bit more preview data. So now let's go to a table and let's look at the calculations that we just made, knowing that we just put in some new data. So if we go to manage, we'll see this table that we used last time to look at some of our stats. Let's go back to that and let's delete the auto stuff So that way we can just look at Teleop now. All right, I'll go to my calculated fields and I'll grab Teleop high items and I'll grab Teleop mid items. And you'll notice here we are. We've got ones that are working. If you look back at all the buttons I clicked in the video, it's actually counting up the number of times I clicked each button for all of the highs and all of the mids. All right. So very cool. We know the number of items we've scored on high and mid. Let's go finish up counting the number of items for low, and then let's go get the score for our Teleop. So let me quick duplicate what we have here in a new field called Teleop low items. All right. We have our low items, our mid items, and our high items. Let's go get the score for each one of these. And it should be fairly trivial. We just go to calculated fields. We grab our Teleop high items, put it in here, and we're just going to go ahead and multiply it by 5. And we're going to repeat this for Teleop mid and Teleop low using the scores as they're outlined in the FRC game manual. All right, so now we actually have our Teleop high score, our mid score, and our low score. Let's go back to our table we made earlier just to check that real quick. So open up our calculated fields and let's grab our high score and put it right next to our Teleop high items. Look at that, it appears to be working very well. Let's put our mid score up there. Look at that. Looks like it's working just perfectly. So awesome, we have our score for all of the items scored in Teleop. Let's go finish making our Teleop score here, and then we'll get to endgame. So in order to do the Teleop score, kind of like we did auto score, we're just going to add up all of the parts of our auto score, of our Teleop score, which includes the high score, the low score, and the mid score. Great. All right, so we're 2/3 of the way to getting our total score. So let's go to endgame, where we'll focus on the end position of the robot, as well as the number of links that a team has gotten. So let's start by doing the links. Links score. All right, and this one is also pretty trivial. We'll just take the number of links and multiply it by 5. So let's go ahead and find up here. We should see number of links. We'll go ahead and multiply that by the number 5. All right, now we get to the slightly more difficult part. This is going to be determining the endgame score. So if we go back to our form and we go to the endgame tab here, which should be group 4, if we click on our endgame scoring dropdown and look at all the choices, we've got 6 different choices. We know that parked is going to get us 2 points. We know that our docked is going to get us 6 points, and we know that engaged is also going to get us 10 points. And then we also know that parked and failed engaged is going to get us the same as parked. This is going to get us the same as parked as well, and then no attempt is obviously 0. So let's get scores for all 3 of those, and then let's add them together to get our endgame score. All right, so if we go back up and look at how we did our docking score for auto, let's go ahead and do something very similar to that for our endgame score, okay? So we'll name this calc endgame docking score. And the first thing that we'll do is we'll go ahead and do exactly like we have up there. We put in parentheses, all right? And we go grab our endgame scoring. So this is the, if we go back to our form here, this is the name of the dropdown, is endgame scoring. So if we grab endgame scoring, and what we want to do is we want to check if it's equal to, not a number, but text that says parked. And just to be safe, how you should do this is you should go to your choices and copy each one to make sure that you don't have a typo or anything like that. All right, so we know if it's equal to parked, that'll give us back a 1, and then we can multiply that by the score that you get from parking and endgame, which is 2 points. So we'll drag over the multiply sign, drag over a number, and put in 2. All right, then we're going to check if endgame scoring equaled engaged. So we'll do the exact same thing here, but just put in engaged. All right, now we're going to continue to do this with all of the options that are here. So I'm also going to check docked. I'm going to check park and failed engaged, park and failed docked, and no attempt, and multiply them by the respective number of points that each one of those selections gives me. All right, there we go. So our end game docking score should come up, and our link score should as well. And if we add those two together, we get our total end game score. So let's go do that, put in link score, and add it to end game docking score. Okay, we've got all three aspects of the game, auto, teleop, and endgame. Now, in order to get our total score, it is really as simple as adding the teleop score to the auto score to the endgame score. Now, just to make sure it's working, let's go to our table. Let's click on New Table, the one we've been using to check these stats. And let's go ahead, let's get rid of Teleop high items and Teleop mid items. And let's throw in our total score. I'll put it right here. And look at that. Now we're starting to see how many points each team gets using the fake data that I put in earlier. So that's it. We've now gotten to our goal of getting total score for each match that every single robot plays. In the next part of the series, we're going to go over how to do some more advanced calculations per robot and per competition as well.